Hey, what's going on, guys? Meteorologist Jonathan Kagas with you on a Wednesday edition of Tropics Watch. There is a lot to break down, not only in the Atlantic, but also in the Pacific. We could have some heavy rain moving into California from what is now Category 2 Hurricane K. So we're going to break all of that down. We're going to get to a lot today. First and foremost, we have Hurricane Earl continuing to get stronger in the Atlantic. This is going to pass very close to Bermuda. A tropical storm warning is in effect now with the 11 o'clock advisory from the National Hurricane Center. Also, Danielle, still a hurricane. We're going to briefly touch on Danielle. She's just meandering around in the North Atlantic. Then there are two additional waves that the National Hurricane Center has highlighted. We're going to break both of those down. Long-term, something to be mindful of in the Caribbean, at least be watching for in the Caribbean. So we're going to break that down. And then, of course, stick around to the end of the video if you are interested in the desert Southwest and on the Pacific coast for what is now Hurricane K, continuing to do its thing and strengthen near the Baja Peninsula of Mexico. So there again, lots to break down in this edition of Tropics Watch. We are going to start with Hurricane Earl per the 11 o'clock advisory from the National Hurricane Center. Again, strengthening 85-mile-per-hour Category 1 storm, expected to become a major hurricane. Wait till you see the latest forecast in a second. Now expected to become a Category 4 hurricane as it pulls away from Bermuda. Pressure now down to 978 millibars. Again, as we watch that pressure drop, that means that the storm is strengthening. And then the wind speeds come up on that as well. It has increased its forward motion now to about 8 miles per hour. Here is the visible satellite. And I want to show you this because you can get the detail. This is the 1-minute scan now. You see the overcast kind of take over, but you can see the individual thunderstorms. There is the center. It is still battling some shear, but it does look relatively healthy. Watch these first couple of frames. You can see the hot towers, these thunderstorms around the center. Still doesn't really have a well-defined eye. It tried to get one earlier this morning, but you see there, it tried, and then there are those thunderstorms wrapping around the center. So a well-defined system and showing signs on satellite that it is trying to get its act together further, and it is expected. This is the official forecast from the National Hurricane Center here. Again, the center of the storm, we were talking about this in Sunday's episode, likely going to stay offshore of Bermuda. There is Bermuda outside of the cone. Remember, the cone is the forecast for where the center can travel. Impacts, though, are felt well outside of the cone. So we are no doubt at least going to feel tropical storm impacts on the island of Bermuda. I'm going to show you some local forecasts there in a second. I'm going to show you some model forecasts for the island itself and some wave heights and things like that. But it's supposed to pass by, forecast anyway, to pass by the island as a 125-mile-per-hour Category 3 hurricane, and then get even stronger to Category 4 status by the time we get towards Friday morning and into Friday evening especially. There's 8 o'clock on Friday. Still expected to be a major hurricane as it works its way into the North Atlantic. So Earl is expected to strengthen big time over the next several days. I want to show you now the wave height forecast as Earl ramps up over the next few days. So this is Wednesday into Thursday, and now pausing this at Thursday night at 10 o'clock as conditions really go downhill on the island of Bermuda. You see closer to the center here, winds, wave heights on the order of 24 to 36 feet closer to the center. We could have breaking waves, though, on the order of 12 to 18 feet on the eastern side and the southern side of Bermuda. So again, keep that in mind, that it is not going to be okay to be out in the water, as the waves are going to be very, very angry. Angry surf for sure, really, until we get into the second part of Friday and likely even into Saturday as well. There's 6 o'clock on Friday and waves breaking now on the northern and eastern side of Bermuda to about 6 to 9, maybe 6 to 10 feet. So again, this is going to take well into the weekend for the surf to back off in Bermuda. So again, be mindful of that. In terms of the wind forecast now, tropical storm warning is in effect. That means that tropical storm conditions are likely within 36 hours. So just keep that in mind, that we are going to see conditions start to go downhill a little bit on Thursday. Now, we mentioned that the worst of the storm is going to stay off the island, is going to stay tightly packed around the center of circulation. You see the model forecast here picking up. There's going to be that little pinhole eye. The strongest wind, no doubt, going to be around the center. Here is us, though, on the island of Bermuda. Watch the wind speed go up. Again, this is no doubt gusting to tropical storm force as we get into Thursday night, stopping this now at 4 o'clock in the morning on Friday. So again, not a walk in the park for us in Bermuda. The center, thankfully, staying out at sea, but still some nasty conditions. I would not be surprised, though, if we have gusts to hurricane force on the island of Bermuda with very heavy rain and that sustained tropical storm force wind speed. There is Friday night, 7 o'clock on Friday, and we're still having gusts to 25 to 30 miles an hour. So still pretty nasty until Friday night. Likely we'll see things start to get much better, though, as we move into the early morning hours on Saturday. So really that Thursday afternoon into late Friday night time period could be nasty at times in Bermuda. Want to make sure that you've got your safe place ready to go, as the rain is going to be heavy, the wind is going to be strong. Quickly on Danielle here, still an 80-mile-per-hour hurricane. The pressure now down to 972 millibars. Again, lower the pressure, stronger the storm. Very large hurricane as well. You see the very large eye. It continues to look relatively healthy. Again, this is very weird and very atypical for a North Atlantic hurricane to be hanging on for this long and to be generating this much energy, if you will. It now has broken the record for the most energy on record for a system as far north as it is. It's called accumulated cyclone energy, or ACE, and it has now become the most powerful hurricane to do that. Watch the crazy stuff that Danielle does. It likely will lose its tropical characteristics over the next couple of days, but could still impact places like Portugal into Spain as we get into the latter stages of this weekend. And into next week, there's Monday morning, you see a 35-mile-per-hour remnant low, but still could bring some nasty weather to places, again, like Portugal or Spain, as it does after it does some weird stuff up in the North Atlantic. Here is the wide view of the Atlantic Basin, mentioned when we started this video, of two other waves that the Hurricane Center is watching. Again, here is Danielle way up in the North Atlantic. There is Earl firing off more thunderstorms after it brought some really heavy rain to Puerto Rico over the weekend. That speck is Bermuda. Again, the center is forecast anyway to pass just east, but still those tropical storm conditions are going to be likely for us in Bermuda. Here is another wave. This one likely will develop, but this one should stay well into the open waters of the Atlantic. So this orange blob here is likely going to remain a fish storm. That's good news. The lower one, though, will have to be watched over the next 7 to 10 days, as it could get close to us in the Leeward Islands and then potentially Puerto Rico, Turks and Caicos over the next week to 10 days. There's also a trailing wave that I want to show you that we're going to have to watch. Again, this is that model spin. This is from the European solution, and I like to show this because what we're looking for in terms of development is a little red ball. That means that the model is picking up some spin, some rotation, if you will, in the low levels of the atmosphere. So you can clearly see where Danielle is, where Earl is. We're going to be focused on these two trailing waves since we already talked about those. And you see here the model showing as we get into September 10th and 11th, really Earl sucking that one up and this one staying up in the sea. So that'll be interesting to see what becomes of that. It's of no merit to any kind of land, so we don't have to worry about that one. This is that wave that was currently highlighted in yellow. And again, if you need a refresher, up above my head is the loop there, and you will see the highlight from the National Hurricane Center. But again, this is going to be the one that we watch closely. And then a second wave, not yet highlighted, but it likely will be. This cluster of thunderstorms still way back over Africa, putting this into motion. And you see it is weaker, at least in the European solution, But nonetheless, it's bringing some inclement weather to the Leeward Islands and eventually into Puerto Rico. Now, this is way out. This is 10 days from now, so a lot can change. It's just to show you, again, something to be mindful of, as we'll likely have a disturbance at least somewhere in the Southwest Atlantic or Caribbean as we get into that 10-day period further out towards September 17th-ish. And then there's that wave that is really, again, still over land. It's a cluster of thunderstorms over Africa. So that is the way, way out into the future. But again, as we get into that last week of September, could be another developing storm working its way in the general vicinity of the Leeward or Windward Islands and into the Caribbean, Turks and Caicos potentially, or Bermuda again. So there's still a lot of time to watch those. It's just, again, it's peak season, and now Africa is firing off these thunderstorms as we typically see in the peak of hurricane season. I want to also talk about the Pacific, a crazy storm here. This is Category 2 Hurricane K. This is Mexico. We're on the western side of Mexico, again, in the Pacific Ocean. So if you're watching from any of the Atlantic islands or the Atlantic side, Gulf side of the United States, this is not going to impact us. But California, Arizona, the desert Southwest, certainly Mexico, we're going to be impacted by this. Already seeing impacts from outer bands of K on the Baja Peninsula of Mexico. Look at this forecast here. Expected to get very close to making a landfall in Mexico along the Baja Peninsula. And then closing in on California. This is not likely to make a landfall in California, but we are likely going to see some very heavy rain in parts of Southern California from this. So this could be beneficial in terms of helping the drought situation in that part of the country, but you see it kind of hooking away again from the United States. Here's the rainfall forecast, though, as we move into the upcoming weekend and into early next week. You see the bright red there and bright yellow indicating the really heavy rain coming out of Mexico, entering Southern California. So again, we don't want a ton of rain at once. So we could end up having some flooding issues in Los Angeles, in San Diego, in parts of Arizona, even into Nevada, New Mexico, Utah, as all of this tropical moisture surges back in. You see the model forecast spitting out 1.5 inches of rain just about in parts of San Diego. So while we could use the rain, we don't want it all at once. So again, heads up from K, could have some flooding as a result. So some crazy stuff going on there in terms of potential flooding. Alrighty, guys, that does it for this video, this edition of Tropics Watch. If you haven't already, we'd love to have you on board here. Please hit that subscribe button. Please hit the alert bell, and you'll be alerted to any time that we post new content. You can watch that. Again, we're going to be watching the tropics closely as Earl closes in on Bermuda. Strongest should stay to the east, but again, likely going to be a nasty 24 to 36 hour period on the island with those outer bands kind of lashing out at Bermuda. And then watching the west coast of the United States and Mexico for that heavy rain from what is now Hurricane K. So a lot going on all of a sudden in the Atlantic after a very quiet stretch. Again, the peak of hurricane season just a few days away, September 10th. Going to be watching it closely for hopefully after this spike of activity that we see a quick wind down behind those couple of waves there that are moving off of Africa. Thank you so much for tuning in, guys. Hit me up on Twitter if you have any questions as well, at Jonathan Kagas, or on Facebook, Jonathan Kagas News 6.